Metal Man.
Hi everyone, this is Francisco from Sculpture, and you're listening to Metal Mayhem.
Spreading faster than a case of the clap in a trailer court. Able to shatter eardrums within a 666-mile radius. A podcast more brutal than all the rest. It's Murder Metal Mayhem!
Now, Shane, we're you got us here with you tonight, and you're up there in Canada. And how's everything going on up there with you guys?
Going pretty good, not too bad. It's been a fairly mild winter here, anyways. We never get hit with one of those crazy shut down the city snowstorms. It's happened all around us, to the east, west, to the south. I mean, you guys got hit down in the south pretty bad, but we didn't get anything like that here, so it's been pretty reasonable, actually. We're not out of the woods yet, though. It could still happen. Knock on wood.
Oh yeah. No, we really didn't get shit here this winter. I paid a guy up front for the winter, and he came here once to shovel. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So
it's like, dude, you owe me some money back, bro.
He hooked me up. He did a spring cleaning outside, gutters and everything, and gave me a really good deal. So we're good. He's a good kid. Anyway, good to have you on, Shane. And every time we do, we're talking about some craziness up there in Canada land. So should be good tonight. And our Canadian episodes have always done really well in numbers of listens. So, Shane, I don't know if you're just bringing that sexiness, if that's what it is, or just that appeal you've got. So The man of 1,000 voices, definitely we're going to show off one of those tonight in the fake commercial, which was great. Really good stuff. So always have fun with that. And so tonight, talking about the Saskatoon freezing deaths, also known as the Starlight Tours.
Which makes it sounds very fucking nice.
It does. Sounds very romantic, like a nice winter's activity. But this is some fucked up shit. I mean, involving the Saskatoon police picking up indigenous men from the First Nation, taking them out to these remote areas, and forcing them out of the squad car to freeze to death.
Figure it out, guys.
As they walk back to town. I mean, that is fucked up, because this is some cold... we think we know cold down here in the fucking United States. Up there, I mean, this is just brutal. And these people were, had no chance, And this happened in the 90s and early 2000s, but it was discovered actually earlier than that. And we're going to get into it tonight. But
what is it, like minus 42 where fucking Celsius and Fahrenheit meet, something like that?
It's something like that.
I think it's minus 42, something, 40, something like that.
Yeah, and they put them out in that weather, dude. That's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly. So this happened in the 90s and 2000s, but like I was saying, it happened even earlier than that, going back to 1976. And if that's the case, there's probably a lot more of this that we don't know about.
Oh, I'm sure.
Now, just to make things clear, especially to anybody that's not from Canada that doesn't understand how this works, I thought I would try to explain this and hopefully not sound like an idiot in the process. But, we are, some fools from the Midwest, and we do our thing. But with the indigenous people in Canada, just like here in the U.S., how it's handled with the Native Americans. So that the Canadians do with the indigenous people, they're divided into three groups. First Nation, which is the ones we're going to be talking about tonight.
Yep. Inuit,
and then Shane, how do you say that last one?
You can say it a couple ways. I say Métis, but I've heard people say Métis.
Okay, I'm glad I asked you, because I would have sounded like an idiot.
I just said Métis.
Yeah.
So Métis.
So Métis works.
That makes sense.
All right.
So you got these three groups, nearly 2 million indigenous people there in Canada, and they make up 5% of the population. So, Shane, is there anything about that indigenous people that you wanted to bring up or maybe clarify how that works?
No, that's about right. I'll bring up a couple statistics here. With the First Nation, Inuit, Métis people, there's about 600 First Nation governments or bands, and they each have their own culture, art, music, and it's over 60 different languages. And
Goddamn.
Wow.
yeah, so a lot of diversity, and sadly, over the years, there's been just an astounding number of missing and murdered Aboriginal women, and the true number, will never be known. But over the last 30 years, I've seen it as high as 4,000 people.
Oh my
Damn,
God.
dude.
That would be a good, I know I've seen something on that, Shane. That would be a good topic to do with you, maybe at another date, kind of the other side of this with the females. That'd be interesting, I think.
So if we move on to location, I guess Saskatchewan is fairly central in Canada. It's a little to the west of where I am. I'm like pretty much bang on in the center. So it's a little west of that. And it's part of the North American grain belt. So it's very flat, wide open farming country in the south anyways. And looking at it from the States, it borders Montana and North Dakota.
Okay.
All right.
Wow.
Yeah, and so the biggest city I guess I would know from Montana would be Billings, and it's about a 9-hour drive north to Saskatoon.
Wow. Okay.
All right, so that ain't fucking short at all.
No,
That's a
up
long
there.
drive. That's a long drive, and so a fun fact: Saskatoon was actually named after a berry, and Saskatoon pie is the fucking tits, man.
All right.
I love that name, Saskatoon. It's just such a great name. The Canadians kill it with the great town names, that's for sure. And I happen to just notice, Shane, I feel bad I did notice it at first, the Votov hat that you're wearing. That's
Yeah.
Fuck yeah, dude.
Hell
Love
yeah.
it.
Dude, we did poutine. We should fry some fucking Saskatoon pie.
Yeah, the Saskatoon pie. Yeah, that sounds good. So very, very cool. Good to know where it is, and I'd like to kind of geographically set it up like that. And Joey, here we go. Another page-a-day story that we featured on an episode. I mean, holy shit, with that amazing calendar, man.
I'm pretty positive this is the third year that I've been doing it, like the third one I've had, right?
I think so. I think so.
So we've gotten, a good handful of ones, and it's funny because we were talking about that as we did one recently that was a fucking page a day too, the Winters, Shirley Winters.
Shirley Winters, yeah.
But it's funny because every time we were talking about it then, we're like, oh yeah, we did this case, and we always forgot the Vince Lee case, which was the original one, I think, that we did.
Yes, it was.
And we got Shane on there too, so.
That's right, Shane's first episode.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Lee. That was a brutal one. That's for damn sure. So
I'm gonna eat
definitely
some faces.
definitely some good page a day stuff there. We got a new thing we're going to introduce tonight in the Mayhem segment, but we're going to be reading from a serial killer cookbook, and we're going to randomly pick pages out and read a little segment from it. So that'll be fun. We'll do that in Mayhem. So Chris, I mean, do you think a lot of our listeners, which are of course mostly U.S.,
All right.
are going to be familiar with this story?
I don't honestly think so, dude. I had no idea until Joey read the page a day. I never even heard of this shit, dude.
Yeah.
Ever. Like, what did you know about
me
it, Shane?
neither.
Yeah, Shane, I mean, I'm sure you obviously know a lot more about this subject.
Oh yeah. It's been in the news quite a bit over the years. It's pretty common knowledge, I guess, if you pay attention to the news, that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah, no, I would have figured the same thing. Joey, what about you?
No, I didn't know anything about it until I saw the page a day, but that's why I was glad to get Shane on here because,
Yeah.
like he said, over there, more common knowledge, people know about that, and it's
Right.
great to have his insight for us to do this one.
No, it really is. It really is. That's very cool. So I had never heard of it either until the page a day. Talked with Shane about it. Of course, like I said, he knew all about it. But, it is more of a regional story that didn't get a lot of play seemingly outside of Canada, but it does deserve attention, and I'm really glad that we're doing this one tonight. Now, also mentioning some statistics, some things I looked up, that Saskatoon has a population of just under 300,000 people. There are approximately right now 460 police officers. But at the time of the Starlight Tours thing was going on, there was one police officer I saw interviewed, and he said there were only 2 or 3 cops that were indigenous people of the 350 cops that were there at that time. Now there's more, but at that time there was 350. So, only a few, and that's usually not good when you're trying to get,
deal with
people,
minorities and shit,
people just get resentful.
Minorities, but
They get resentful. Now, Shane, how big of a problem is this with police and mixing with the indigenous people? I mean, is this a big issue over there?
Yeah, it's very similar to, like what you guys have down there in the States. It's trust issues. It's a fairly big problem right across Canada. I mean, the legacies of colonization and assimilation leads to distrust with the government agencies, the RCMP, police, and you can add the church into that as well. And just to show you, during the Starlight Tour investigations, they set up a little bit of a hotline to receive current and historical complaints against the police. They received over 800 calls, but no one would come forward and actually go on the record. They're scared of reprisal and police lashing out at them. And I mean, if you go on YouTube or wherever, you don't have to look very hard on the internet to find examples of violence, excessive force against indigenous peoples at the hands of the police. And one thing that actually brought it to the front a bit was the George Floyd case. It actually revived the conversations quite a bit.
Oh, interesting.
I think they have like the same issues. Like, I know it's above Canada, but it's still United States. The indigenous people in Alaska, they treat the indigenous people in Alaska like they're fucking crap, basically, too. It's like,
now, do they have their own police? Like these groups? I mean, are they in like a community, or are they just kind of spread out amongst everybody else?
Yeah, they do have their own police forces.
Okay.
Band police, yeah.
Yeah, see, I wondered how that worked when you got the two different, even the police forces. Do they get along with each other, or are they kind of at odds?
In the smaller communities, they'll usually have RCMP detachments.
Right on.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about with that Gabriel Wortman. I know I didn't realize that with the way the RCMP deals with those small communities that don't have their own police department. So I never thought of that with them. And we have the county, like a sheriff is how we do that. So that's just interesting how different we are and how close we are to each other. So
then the bigger bands will have their own police forces.
Right. So the first couple that we're going to talk about here, Rodney Nastus and Lawrence Wegner, these guys both died in 2000. They were both members of the First Nation group and had issues with drugs and alcohol. Lawrence Wegner was of mixed race. His mother was First Nation. And their bodies were found in remote areas in the outskirts of Saskatoon. And inquests into both deaths proved that they died of hypothermia. And I'm glad they were able to figure that one out. Gee, how did this person die? They're frozen solid, motherfucker.
Yeah. You gotta let them thaw out for 3 days before you can even do an autopsy.
Exactly. So that just always makes me laugh when I watch like a true crime documentary and they got some PhD with like 14 initials after his name,
Right.
And he's talking about something that's so fucking obvious, like, gee, I'm glad they had to bring him in here for this,
He died from a fucking goddamn 9mm bullet through the skull. Oh, well, that's the only wound he has, and his brain's laying on the floor. Thanks.
Yeah, exactly. Glad we got you down here. But you're talking about these really cold temperatures getting down to 5 degrees Fahrenheit or negative 21 Celsius. And that's some horrible shit to be dealing with on a dark road in the middle of the fucking night.
In the middle of nowhere.
And, that's the kind of weather you can get frostbite in minutes to exposed skin. So, and Joey, these guys both had issues with alcohol. So it's believed the police would pick them up and And how did they do that, man?
I mean, they pick them up on, bullshit, trumped up charge. And yeah, these guys, not just these guys, but a lot of them, had issues with alcohol. And they would take them out, on a long, that's why they call it the Starlight Tours, because they take you out through the night, out into the fucking edge of the fucking city, and drop you off in more of a rural spot, and be like, okay, here you go, now you can walk it off, and go home.
Because they don't want to deal with the paperwork.
Right, and they don't want to deal with all that, plus, there's probably a good handful of them that were, tallying up a fucking kill
scorecard.
Yeah, but, the thing is, too, is I know back whenever I used to drink heavy and I'd get wasted, and Chris, he still gets drunk and wasted, so he knows. But, I mean, there was times, I'd be so fucking hammered, sometimes I'd be leaving a party or leave somebody's house, and, I'm in the town that I live in and find myself walking the wrong direction and fucking not knowing where the fuck I'm at, because I'm so lit. And fucking, I can't imagine being out there. And a lot of these people weren't dressed for the situation. Right. They were just out at a bar or whatever. So they're not to mention they're drunk, and alcohol thins your blood, so you're more likely to die from hypothermia. So everything about it was just fucking, almost fucking scripted to work in the police's favor one way or another. They didn't have to put up with shit. They got rid of what they deemed was trash or whatever the situation was.
Yeah, it's just fucked up. I mean, that's what they were claiming. I think I saw on one of the programs I watched where they were saying, oh, we just let them walk it off. But, no, you're taking these guys like a little bit too fucking far to be walking it off, especially with one shoe and whatever other fucking bullshit they were pulling, which we're going to get to here in a minute. So, I mean, that's how Bon Scott fucking died, and AC/DC fucking froze to death in his car because he was fucked up. Like Joey said, that's just a common fucking thing, that people that are drunk are more susceptible to that. And this is fucking winter, and Bon Scott was in February he died. So yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that it seems obvious to me, and definitely don't want to be taking them that kind of distance. I mean, Chris, since you're the podcast resident expert on alcohol consumption,
dude,
how rough would it be to be walking home drunk like that out that far?
First of all, these guys were pussies. Deal with it, dude. Get you a goddamn motherfucking bottle
so
of whiskey.
They don't meet up with the nation?
Yeah, fuck that, dude.
Your nation. We're not First Nation.
But fuck
Shawback
that,
Nation.
I mean, I've done it before, and I've fucking been, like Cash was saying, fucking walking from wherever, cold as fuck, and by the time I got home, I'm just like fucking just like dying, like just freezing my fucking nuts off, and I'm like, I am so happy to be home. And then just you're like just so fucking exhausted already when you make it to your destination. You're just so exhausted from the cold and fucking being drunk that you just, as soon as you walk in, you hit that warmth, you're just out. So like being out in that cold and having to try to keep pushing fucking forward, I gotta get somewhere warm. Eventually, it doesn't take that long before you're just like, I'm fucking done, dude. And you gotta sit down and take a break. And that's probably the worst thing you could do in that fucking cold is stop and take a break, because your body's just gonna give up.
Yeah.
And you're just going to sit there and shiver and freeze, and that's it.
Yeah, that's bad news, man. I mean, that is.
And you're already stumbling.
Right.
Imagine and your lap's covered in piss, so you're frozen.
Yeah, right, exactly, dude. You don't piss yourself.
We learned a lot about dealing with the cold when I was in the Army, because when I was at Fort Knox, Kentucky, when I was in basic, we went to the field like the last week of basic. You're out in the field like for a week solid. And the warmest it got was 0.
Yep.
The warmest
That's
it got.
fun.
It was fucking brutal as fuck. So, yeah. So, but we learned a lot about, how to dress and layers and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So.
And don't piss yourself.
And, don't, unless you want to, have to sit in frozen urine, I guess. But
it's warm at first.
But I thought we'd ask you, Chris. I mean, since that's kind of your forte is drinking over there. Now, another case in January of 2000 involving Daryl Knight, who said he was picked up by two police officers, Munson and Hatchin, and they were not the same two that we're going to mention here in a little bit. So different officers here. This was being done by others on the force. So this is not just those two guys.
Cops, yeah.
Yeah, and he said they dropped him off in the middle of fucking nowhere, and when he told them, I'm going to freeze to death, their response was, that's your fucking problem. And he was able to get to the power station. They showed that video where you could see the power station in the background. And he got lucky that somebody came to the door and let him in and got himself a taxi.
Yeah, they were basically like, what the hell are you doing out here?
Yeah.
Fucking,
yeah, I mean, he was lucky. I mean, he could have easily
dude.
been one of those, that ended up dead. The cops would, claim they gave him a ride home, but that was bullshit. And they were both found guilty of assault and unlawful confinement and wound up getting sentenced to 8 months in prison. So not really enough time, but... that's something.
The assault charge was dropped, actually, and out of that 8 months, they served 4.
Oh, my God. Yeah, that's frustrating as hell.
I mean, at least they got some time and did some time, actually.
Yeah, at least they did something, and he didn't die, thankfully, but, still, that's fucked up.
And I'm sure there's multiple indigenous people in the system, and they're looking at these motherfuckers like, what the fuck?
Right.
And they were probably scared for their lives, I'm sure.
Yeah. So the police said these were isolated incidents and not something that was rampant throughout the Saskatoon police, which, like I said, had 350 officers in uniform at that time. 2003, the police chief, Russell Sabo, actually admitted that there was a possibility the police were dumping First Nation men in these isolated areas. He was the one who mentioned that an officer had been disciplined as far back as 1976 for having done this with a First Nation female. So the first case was a female that we know of. And then he had met with Daryl Knight after his run-in with the cops, and he vowed he would get to the bottom of these accusations. So, I mean, Shane, this is fucking outrageous, man, that it goes back that far, and we're talking about a female as well.
Yeah, and I heard that she was pregnant too, and
oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow. So whatever happened with that case? The guy got disciplined? Is that the one that got disciplined, or?
Well, like I said, the police, they first insisted this was an isolated incident, and then when they started looking into it, the police chief had to backtrack on what he said, and
of course,
thankfully the case from '76 was still there. It didn't, sometimes records have a tendency to disappear.
Right.
So once they discovered that, the chief had to backtrack a bit, and it's the way it goes, deny until you're proven wrong, and then you change your answer. And of course there's some good cops. Not all cops are bad, and
of course
there was one patrol cop who was investigating on his own. He's a patrol cop, he's not in homicide or anything, so he's doing this at personal risk to his job and everything, and
getting in too deep.
He brought the evidence to the attention of his staff sergeant, and he was actually threatened. They told him, don't pursue this matter, or something's going to happen to you. And
oh man,
yeah. So very hard to investigate internally. And the chief, he pretty much came out and said, yeah, there's such a thing as the blue wall or the blue line. I don't know what you guys call that in the States, but
the blue line,
where the cops cover for each other, and so that makes internal investigations pretty difficult.
Yeah, definitely. Sounds like the same kind of crap that unfortunately has gone on in some of the police departments here. But, you hope that these things get fucking fixed and moving forward, fucking put an end to this archaic fucking bullshit. This is just fucking ridiculous.
Have you guys recently had a female officer have like half of the department run a train on her while her husband's sitting at her?
That story's fucked up. Those memes are just relentless. That's just fucking wow. That's just fucked up. So, Joey, it looks like it took some guts at least for the guy to admit fault. I mean, wouldn't you say so?
Yeah, I think he was being pressured from a lot of different points. Organizations and rights groups and things like that. I think they were all coming at them. It was time that they needed to do something about it and take a little bit of responsibility. So, by him, even opening the door to, try to shed light on all this. You talk about they had an incident all the way back in 1976. This is a thing that those police were doing. Not all of them, like we said, but there obviously was a group of them. This continued throughout the whole fucking next couple decades. Right. So it was passed on. It was something that they did regularly enough that they had a fucking modus operandi themselves on how they did this. And that's right. I think that's one of the creepiest things. So all this time, and it had a name. It's called the fucking Starlight Tours.
Right.
So right. For a reason.
So people in Canada, they knew what was going on. So it's like, no, this has to be fucking brought up. And I think even to save face at all, I think the chief of police, I think he had to open it up, and maybe in that sense he makes himself look a little bit better because he was the one that finally did something about it. So the rest of Canada's got his back at least. The department might be a little pissed at him for a while, but
Right. Yeah, I mean, I just thought it took some guts, for him to do that. I'm just wondering how about beyond Saskatoon, Shane? I mean, this can't certainly be isolated to this one area. Is this something that's
definitely
been heard
not.
of in other places?
It was Canada-wide. Yeah, for sure. It's Canada-wide issue.
Wow, because that's what I'm saying. I mean, we're talking about one area of a very large country that as this is happening, and obviously this had to be going on in other places. So it's fucked up. This is just kind of like the tip of the iceberg, as they say. So definitely crazy. Now, Chris, does it get you upset talking about First Nation with the whole Shawback Nation? I mean, do we need to clear that with the nation before we talk about any other nation?
They are the First Nation, so I mean, I can't bitch much, man.
Okay, I just want to make sure, because if you're getting all squirrely over there.
They cool with me. If they got a problem with me, then we might have a problem. No,
all right,
they are First Nation. Man.
All right, very good, very good. So what I find interesting is we see examples of racism all over the world, but the way the media, at least here, makes it sound as it only happens here in the United States, But as we're talking about tonight, I mean, this is a Canada-wide issue and has been for a while. And no matter where it's going on, it's fucking horrible, and it shouldn't be happening.
No, it's everywhere.
Yeah, it's not just here, but it cracks me up. And then I know I was watching some documentary about like the country that occupies the most land outside of its borders. And like the U.S. is always getting dinged for, you're going to this war because you want to take and all this bullshit. It's England. I mean, they fucking own like a ton of shit, I'm like, what about them? Like, throw them under the fucking bus for once, It's not just the United States. So
don't blame me.
I just thought it was interesting because, like Shane said, it mirrors a lot of the same issues we have here with minorities and the police and how they interact and all that. Now, Shane, the case of 17-year-old Neil Stonechild is really what brought this all to light. You want to give us kind of a summary of what his story was?
Well, Stonechild, he was known to police. He had multiple run-ins with the police over stuff like, theft, intoxication, public intoxication, and breaking probation. And the night he was killed, he actually had a warrant out on him for bailing from the juvie center he was staying at. He bailed on that. And on the night he died, he was at a house party with his buddy Jason Roy. They were playing cards, drinking pretty heavily. And then they left the house party short before midnight, and they went over to a 7-Eleven, get some snacks. But neither of them had any money, so they just started walking through the store down the aisles and eating stuff off the shelves.
That's fun.
Okay.
So
You ever done that?
and no comment. The clerk chased them out and called the police, so they got the heck out of there, and they got the heck out of there with the police on the way. His buddy Jason wanted to go back to the party, but Neil, he wanted to go visit someone else who just lived pretty close to the party, and they got into an argument over that. They kind of separated a little bit, went their own ways, and by then the police had shown up, and they found Neil. They recognized who Neil Stonechild was. They arrested him, beat him up a little bit, and handcuffed him, put him in the back of the police car. And shortly after that, they came upon Neil's buddy, Jason Roy, and they questioned him. And thankfully, the police ran into Jason because his testimony is the only thing that
his
links.
testimony,
Right.
Yeah, that's the only thing that links Stonechild being in the back of that cruiser.
Right. Yeah, definitely. He was key.
That's for sure.
Yeah, that's an interesting story. So then, he's in this car, and his friend sees what's going on, and this is what I thought was an interesting part of the story, was that when the police did check for the alias that he gave him, that Jason Roy had given him, it shows it in there. There's like a timestamp on it. So you can see like when they checked,
Right.
and then Jason said they were drunk, had a 40-ounce bottle of vodka between them.
That's a fucking bunch of vodka, bro.
Yeah, it's a whack of that.
That is a lot. 3 minutes later, then they call in Stonechild's name, and then 5 minutes later they call in the name of Borczuch. But he said no one else was in the back of the car when he was being questioned by the police officers. So just some shadiness going on here. Constable Sanger and Constable Hartwig were the two involved in this situation. And like Shane said, that witness, Jason Roy, he's the one that, said he saw him. And I mean, that guy's got to feel guilty, for not being able to do more. I think
Neil's in the back
anybody would
of the
beat
car,
themselves
like yelling,
up.
like screaming, like "Yo, help me! They're gonna kill! They're gonna kill me!"
Yeah,
like,
he said there was like blood on his nose and
Right.
streaking across the glass. And
like
shit.
they'd
I
already
mean,
beat him and shit, and then
that's fucked up.
they fucking throw him out with one shoe.
Yeah. So 4 days later, though, Joey, what do they find, man?
They find Stonechild's body, and it's out in a field. Some construction workers found him. He only had one shoe on.
Right.
But, they say they do an investigation. They find that there's no foul play at hand, and
Right.
that's it. That's case closed. But that's
He was
so
just
fucked
out there
up, bro.
fucking drunk and froze himself to death.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
definitely sounds shady as fuck. And then, Chris, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police are called in to help, and what
Yeah.
happens with that?
2003, there's an inquiry to Neil's death. Fucking,
Right.
they said that he was fucking picked up by the cops and shit before his death, but didn't accurately note their interaction with him like they should have.
Right.
But fucking the marks found on his nose and shit, they said could have been made by the handcuffs.
Right.
Which is pretty fucked up because I don't think so. Because like the way fucking what's his name? His homie fucking said fucking
Jason Roy.
Jason Roy, yeah. Like he's like he said he was like just like profusely kind of bleeding out of his nose and shit. Because
Right.
I listened to interviews with him. He's just like
Yeah.
like he gets choked up thinking about it. Like that was like one of my best friends. Fucking
Yeah.
I should have done more and shit.
Yeah, and you would feel guilty as fuck.
Right, and fucking they say there wasn't enough sufficient evidence to fucking on his cause of death, so the inquest ended, and they fucking just there they go.
Yeah, so it ended, 2004. That was over with. I saw there were over 60 witnesses in the inquiry, so this was a big deal, and it got a lot of people, nervous in the police department, I'm sure, because they definitely looked like they were taking this shit seriously. Now, Shane, they also said the relations between the Saskatoon police and the First Nations were absolutely terrible, as you said. So they wind up bringing in this former cop. What was the deal with that guy? That was pretty cool, I thought.
Yeah, he was First Nations himself, and they brought him in to investigate it. So he had a little bit of different take on it, and people trusted him a bit more, and
makes sense.
so it's a bit easier for him to talk to people and for people to trust him.
Right.
It's like, I'm looking out for my people here. You guys, these cops ain't looking out for nobody but these cops.
Yeah.
Basically.
Shane, I got a question for you. Do the police up there, do they have to wear the body cams like they all do down here now?
No body cams.
Oh, shit. Okay. So, because I know once that happened, that brought a lot of accountability forward, where police can't do a lot of the shit they used to do. And
because they're on video.
Yeah, because now you're on video. So you guys are still in the dark with all that, huh?
Well, you don't hear about Starlight Tours anymore. All the police cars have GPS now, so it's going to be pretty difficult to pull that kind of shit off nowadays. And
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised you guys don't have the body cams because, yeah, like Joey said, I mean, here they're everywhere. And that big Murdoch trial, that was a big part of it, was what they saw in the body cam. So very, very cool the way they do that now, I think. I mean, this is unbelievable.
A lot of times, though, those body cams fall off, fall off.
Sure. So, yeah, at the conclusion of the inquest, I did see that both the police officers, Sanger and Hartwig, were both fired. They appealed that decision, but it was upheld. And so at least that was done. But I feel they got off way too fucking easy with this one. It's amazing they didn't get some jail time like the two cops that, we talked about earlier that got 8 months. I'm just kind of surprised that
these guys didn't get shit.
Now, I saw that in April of 2018, Ken Thomas said that he was picked up and dropped off on the outskirts of town for no fucking reason, and an inquiry into his accusations was proven unfounded. So it could have been, I'm not saying it was, but it could have been, hoax.
He just
Don't
looking
really
like
know.
to get something like...
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say.
Yeah.
People do stupid shit, who knows. It could have been legit, though. I really don't have any idea. Now, Joey, we saw that here in the United States, with the ridiculous crap from Jussie Smollett, who claimed that the guys attacked him and racial slurs and punching him and all this shit.
Them.
MAGA country and all this crap. And, it seems like, it's amazing that, both countries are seeing similar things with just races not getting along,
Yeah, it's unfortunate. We're close enough, though. We only share a border, so a lot of the things that fucking get brought up or...
That's a good point.
Brought into view here or there do get pushed over onto the border. We do have similar outlooks and aspects about the way things are going on. A lot more than, like, say, we would have with, Japan or whatever.
Of course,
right.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I think with Canada, I think we have really good relations, honestly. So
yeah,
fuck you, Shane.
Hey now, but hey, you wasted 3 fucking aprons on this guy. So yeah, the if that guy was bogus, and claiming this happened and it didn't, that's reminded me of the Jussie Smollett thing. I just saw a documentary about that, and it's just so fucking ridiculous,
right?
That anybody took that seriously. I mean, it's just so absurd. I watched this body language podcast. It's really good. 4 different experts, and they show like Bundy, Gacy, like a bunch of them, and they go through and watch it, and then they comment on how they answered questions
and how they
deception and stuff like that. It's fascinating to me. As a writer, I'm really zoning in on that, of using facial expression to help create tension in scenes, and so I'm really looking at it from that.
I think those body language experts are fucking serial killers themselves because they know what to look for.
They
can
be.
control their own shit.
They're
just like,
be.
oh, yeah, we good.
Yeah, but they did one on Jussie Smollett. It was really funny, and that's what made me want to watch it. Just like, oh my God, it's so ridiculous. And Chris, I saw that the Saskatoon Police Wikipedia page had a little bit of controversy.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
They have that Starlight Tours section on the Wikipedia page, and from 2012 and 2016.
I'm sure they love that being on there.
Yeah, it was
right?
gone. And apparently that was like when it was taken down, it was done from the Saskatoon fucking police department. So, I mean, that's going to tell you something right there. If they don't want you to see that, there's either something going down. I just don't know why they would fucking want that to be disappeared, because if that really happened to bad cops, you want it known like, hey, this did happen, but these cops aren't in the system anymore.
True.
As opposed to fucking like just straight hiding, like, no, that don't happen. That don't.
Yeah, and they were able, though, to prove that the person that took that down was in the police department using a police department computer.
Right. Like,
so that's
dude.
just fucking stupid, man. I mean, just fucking stupid. So the police claim they were unable to pinpoint who at the department was doing it, but they just know it was coming from the department. What do you think about that?
Yeah, pretty fucking hard to believe, especially since it was done repeatedly, you know. It
Right.
wasn't just once.
Right.
It was repeatedly edited, and I mean, they're pretty stupid not to cover their tracks. They could have used a VPN on somebody's home computer and no one would be the wiser. But why they're doing that at the station is beyond me.
Right, that's
and,
stupid,
Right.
dude.
Like BTK
Yeah, look-
doing it from the church and saving it
Sending
on a
that
floppy
floppy
disk.
disk. Like, come on.
So they're trying to whitewash it, you know, and trying to put it behind them, trying to whitewash it, sweep it under the rug.
Right.
Nothing to see here, folks. And
Yeah, that's just amazing. I mean, you'd think how brazen these motherfuckers are. They got away with it and just keep doing it like, fuck you, you know, like they don't even give a shit. We're going to investigate ourselves. It's like the biggest fucking con of all, you know, you're quote unquote investigating, but you're fucking dirty as fuck. Everybody's in on this shit, even up at the top. I mean, it's messed up. It's the same kind of crap, you know, we've talked about so many times with cases right here, you know, so it's just, it's crazy, man. It really is.
yeah. And with all the all the new policies and programs that they implemented from the investigations, and I really don't know what kind of strides they've been making, or if it's all just talk. And because recently there have been a few cases of First Nations people getting killed by police doing wellness checks.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, recently there's been a lot of focus on that, and they're starting to rethink when and where law enforcement should take a lead on a crisis situation, and they're looking at, getting things like crisis teams to address mental health and addiction issues instead of, sending out the cops guns blazing.
Which is exactly what they're talking about doing here, too. That's like...
Wow.
The United States, like especially after all the George Floyd and all that shit, that's a
Right.
huge part that they were bringing up, is that we don't need the cops out there as much as we need people who can help you with mental health. It's such a fine line, though. Like,
Yeah,
man,
it's
these people
fucked
are
up.
dangerous, and it's like, okay, you're great with mental health and shit, but if this motherfucker comes at you on some violent shit,
Right.
Are you really gonna do something? I don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely, like you said, Joey, a fine line. And yeah, I think
Yeah.
both sides are just struggling, it's just because you get these violent, people doing these crimes. I mean, probably having some serious mental health breakdowns. And Chris taking his piss break here jumps in. He's such a professional about it. He's just very slick, gets up and goes and does his thing, comes back in, times it just right with the notes. So
It happens.
oh, you're just a professional, Chris. I mean, Jesus, you've done
I am
this
very far from
215 times, So I didn't see that the two constables that were involved in the Stone Child death were given any sort of prison time. They just got fired. So that's fucked up. I did see there was a documentary made about Daryl Knight's experience, which is the one I watched, Two Worlds Colliding. It was a winner of the Canada Award, and I thought it was really good. It was very well done. And there have been a handful of bands that have done songs about this, And there was also a play called Starlight Tour as well. But again, not a lot of press outside of Canada here. But there are people trying to help. Like we talked about with the liaison police officer, this guy organizes events with the indigenous children and really trying to get the police in the communities and getting to meet the folks and trying to hopefully make them feel like they can trust them and if something's going on. But as always, you know, a few bad apples makes the whole fucking bunch look bad because like we said, not all police officers do stupid shit like this. Unfortunately, a small handful can do a lot of harm and gets people fucking upset, you know, and people unfortunately in this case dying. I mean, this is just terrible. Anything to add to this one, guys? Starlight Tours?
Nah, I don't got anything except
Nope.
it's fucked up shit.
No. Yeah, making someone, forcing someone to freeze like that is tantamount to torture, basically.
No, it is.
Yeah, that is absolutely terrible. I couldn't even imagine how that would feel. I mean, just awful. So, and the way that Roy explained, you know, what he saw with his friend, you know, getting carted away. I mean, how terrible is that? You know, screaming and trying to get out of the back of the car and you're all bloody.
Right, and as the cops living there doing that, you know what the weather's like, and you know you don't want, like you said, Shane, torture. You know you don't want to be out there.
Right.
And now you're just taking random people and just dropping them off and knowing what is going to fucking happen. Like, that's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah,
It's a death sentence,
Yeah,
basically.
exactly.
It's a death sentence.
Exactly.
yeah, especially if you're drunk, especially that much worse. I did my research watching a few different documentaries, as I mentioned, specifically, though, that Two Worlds Colliding was excellent. It's on YouTube. The Criminals podcast I thought was pretty decent. They interviewed a former Saskatoon police officer who spoke out about this. Very interesting to get his perspective. I'm not sure if it was the same First Nations officer that we talked about earlier. I don't remember the name. Unfortunately, didn't write it down. But the podcast was pretty decent. There's some good stuff out there, but not a lot. Again, seems like it's somewhat of a Canada-only story. So hopefully bring some light to this with some U.S. and other listeners in other countries that maybe are not familiar with this story. So, yeah, if you want to read about it or check some stuff out, there's something to get you started. Of course, Shane, we love having you on, so thank you for coming on again. We're going to keep you on to the end of the segment because Joey's getting ready to do his thing in some page a day. And also, you know, just wanted to say thanks, man. It's always fun to have you on, man.
Well, no, thanks to you guys, too. You know, it's always my pleasure to talk with you. And congrats on 666,000 listeners.
Yeah, dude. Hell yeah. We know CK's throwing up the horns. CCK is throwing up the horns back there. And yeah, what a milestone. Very, very cool. So thanks. And you're a part of this. And this is just really awesome. And so, yeah, we're going to keep you on here to the end of this. But I just wanted to say that before we got caught up in the next craziness that's about to unfold. But next week, we're doing another fucked up story. I know I always say that, right?
Every time.
Every time. It's the most
it's
fucked
almost
up story.
always fucked up.
I think Pedro Lopez is about as bad as it gets, so I think that's the worst.
Peter Scully, man, we need to do Peter Scully.
We need
shit.
like a scale, you know. But anyway, next week we're going to Ohio, southern Ohio, the foothills of the Appalachians. So these are some backwoods individuals, okay?
Well, what y'all want to do now?
That's right. Pike County murders. But this is fucked up. This is not the 419, Joey, I checked. This is the 220-326-740 or 937. So
Yeah,
still
this is Southern Ohio.
yeah. 419 has such a cool ring to it, you know, but none of those numbers are cool like 419. Now, this happened in April of 2016. 8 individuals from one family were murdered in 4 separate locations on that night.
Crazy.
fucking brutal. I mean, execution style shootings, kids, adults. I mean, this is fucked up. And the way they plan this shit out is so heinous. I mean, this is a good one to do. It's a terrible story, but this is recent. Now, 3 of the 4, there's a mom, a dad, and their 2 sons that did this. 3 of the 4, their cases have been resolved. One was found guilty. The other 2 pled guilty and took a deal and testified against all the others. The last one is the father. His is getting ready to happen. It was ready to happen, and they bumped it to next year. So I figured, fuck it, let's just do the case. It's a Hatfields and the McCoys modern. Brutal shit. And we're going to dig into that one next week. So that should be a good one, talking about some Pike County murder stuff. There's some good... If you YouTube that, there's some really good court podcasts on there that talk about this case. You could see interviews with people. I mean, it's very, very fascinating. They show the crime scenes. These were all like mobile homes, I think, but they come through and it's just
annihilation,
a fucking bloodbath. Yeah, it's bad. Joey, what about Page of Days, man? What do you got for us?
I got some. Now, I got a couple this week, and then next week I'll probably only have a couple also, because they did a big segment on the Hart family crash, which I already talked about last year
the Hart
with Page
family
a
crash
Day.
is crazy.
And I think that's on our list anyway, so I'm not going to talk about that, but that's a super fucked up case. So
it is.
They did a thing about that, so
okay.
I'll skip over that. But last week, for our listeners that are pretty regular, they'll remember I talked about a dude named Jack Murph the Smurf Murphy.
Oh yeah, you teased this last week.
Yeah, in the Diamond Heist, and I told y'all that this week's first one is called the Whiskey Creek Murders and involves Jack Murph the Smurf. So we'll do that one.
Fucking
Whiskey
Creek.
Yeah, this is for Shawback because it says whiskey in it.
Yeah, Shawback Nation.
So, the jewel heist at the American Museum of Natural History wasn't the last time that Jack Murph the Smurf Murphy would find himself on the wrong side of the law. In fact, his crimes grew even more sinister after he served his time for the heist. And that includes his involvement in the brutal Whiskey Creek murders. In 1967, the bludgeoned and stabbed bodies of 2 women were found weighted down in Whiskey Creek Canal near Hollywood, Florida. The women were identified as Terry Ray Frank and Anna Lee Moan, and they had been suspected of stealing nearly $500,000, or $4 million today, in stocks from the brokerage firm that they worked for in Los Angeles.
God damn.
The theft was discovered after the women quit and moved to Florida, where they had moved in with Murph the Smurf Murphy.
That's fucking
God.
So he's arrested for the murders along with an accomplice named Jack Griffith. Murphy enters a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity, and he spent several months in a psychiatric hospital, but then the judge found him competent to stand trial. So in March 1969, Murphy was found guilty of first-degree murder of Terry Ray Frank and sentenced to life in prison with hard labor. His accomplice, Griffith, was charged with second-degree murder and received a 45-year sentence with hard labor. Murphy says that there was a third man, because that's what they always say, named Rusty, that actually murdered the 2 women, and that he and Griffith were merely there to help dispose of the bodies.
Right.
And no one was ever tried for Anna Lee Moan's death in that case. While in prison for Frank's murder, Murphy was also charged with conspiracy to commit robbery and assault for serving as the getaway driver in the 1968 attack on socialite Olive Wofford, who was a big name back in the 60s. For this crime, he received another life sentence plus 20 years. So, in 1974, 5 years into Jack Murphy's sentence for murder, robbery, and assault, a group of champion athletes and local businessmen visited the Florida State Prison where he was incarcerated, and the group inspired Murphy to turn his life around. He became a mentor to the other men he housed within the prison, and he participated in the prison chaplain program and led Bible study. His earliest parole eligibility date was November 2005, but because of his good behavior, that date was incrementally moved back 19 years, and he was paroled back in November 1986. Now, his ministry was prolific. He visited more than 1,200 prisons, and he became a keynote speaker on the role religion can play in crime prevention and rehabilitation.
God damn.
The conditions of his lifetime parole were terminated by the Florida Parole Board in 2000, and he died in Crystal River, Florida on September 12th, 2020. So,
God
Murph
damn.
the Smurf.
Murph the Smurf.
Why Smurf, though? I mean, does that mean something other than I think it does? Because I just think of those little blue
That's all
fuckers.
I
And
got.
you know what?
That's all I got.
And let me say that it's because I smoke so much weed, I keep saying Murph the Smurf. That's not what it is. It's Murph the Surf.
Oh, yeah,
Like
yeah.
Murph the Surf.
So, yeah. Which also, I don't understand what that means either. So, regardless. Either
Weird.
way, I don't get it.
Smurf or Surf. Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. It is funny
just a
because
cool
after you
name.
said, I knew I kept saying Smurf because
That's
I'm fucking
hilarious.
idiot. But anyway.
That's hilarious.
So,
419.
okay, so, yeah. So this is the last one I got. Like I said, I was going to make it short this week and next with Page a Day, but we love them, obviously. They give us good cases.
Oh,
We talk
yeah.
about shit,
Good
so.
stuff.
All right. So this one's called Teen Makes It Rain. So you know Punky loves this one.
Oh, yeah.
An Ohio teen had a lucrative spring break in 2015.
Obviously,
The
Ohio.
Yeah. The 13-year-old returned to school with $25,000 in $100 bills that he stole from his 83-year-old grandfather.
Jesus.
He began
man.
He began distributing the money among his classmates, handing out thousands of dollars before school officials noticed what was going on. The police confiscated property bought with the stolen money, and they recovered $7,000. The teen was charged in juvenile court with delinquency by way of theft from the elderly, and there was a classmate of his that also faced delinquency count because he was receiving stolen property after their grandparents took the teens on a shopping spree with the stolen money.
Oh, my God. Wow.
That's some Ohio shit.
Fallen ass 13-year-old
Some
just like
Ohio
gang,
shit.
gang.
Yeah. Wow. All singles, though, but yeah, fucking
Yeah,
hey.
yeah.
It's all $100
Wow.
bills.
Damn.
In pennies, shit. 83 years
pennies.
old? Fuck.
In pennies. Yeah, I remember when I had a paper out having to fucking roll pennies and God, I
God.
fucking hated that shit. Oh shit! All right, well, good stuff. Always
Fucking right.
provide some good fodder for Murder Metal Mayhem. We love it. So, all right, well, we have done our fair share of murdering tonight. I think it's time to crank up some fucking metal. So, Shane, what the fuck do we need to do?
Let's get our fucking metal on, boys.
Hell yeah,
right.
dude.
Thanks,
We'll see ya.
Shane.
Just because CK has passed on, he's not done educating the masses. CK will forever be the great metal motherfucker. We're here to stop posers.